This is a question for Trina Ha. I'm Graham Greenleaf, UNSW Law Faculty. Trina, when you discussed the possible text and data mining exception, you talked about various safeguards in it, but I didn't hear you mention the possibility of websites opting out of text and data mining by using the robot exclusion protocol to indicate that they don't want web spiders to indulge in text and data mining of their sites, or other means, perhaps. Could you just clarify that, please?
So for websites, you can't contract out of the exception by saying you can't do it, but based on feedback, we did say that you can put into place certain technical safeguards that would so that the text and data mining would not compromise the stability of the website. It's a general principle. We'll be working on it further and taking into account further consultations from both the subscribers, the users, as well as the publishers and intermediaries.
Do we have other questions? I have one. You see that across the board, if you look at the two that are quite far progressed, you can see there are certain issues that come out. Orphan works, contractual override, in particular, two that interest me. I'm wondering from Mandy, though Mandy's not on the review team, how much do you feel like the timing of your review will hopefully be able to build on these previous ones, or how much do you feel like New Zealand's stepping out on its own? It's harder, you're not from internal.
Yes, I am very much not an MB employee. But what I will say is that from what I have seen, the team is doing an excellent job of gathering the evidence that's available to them, including international evidence. So I think that they are gathering that information on their own. I would imagine that they've probably reached out to these teams, or they will as part of the process. And I would also expect that those of us making submissions will draw very heavily on international both experience and evidence. It's kind of inevitable when you're as small as New Zealand.
And I might actually toss that also over to Emma and saying, I know that you're already fairly much progressed, but with the possibility of new government, I know that you're looking at new work that you might do, both arising out of the review and other places. How much do you guys think that the Singapore reform might be able to be a leader for Australia, or is it all depending on different views?
I'll say, as a good public servant, it'll all depend on the policies of any incoming government. But obviously, there's a track that we've gone down, and those issues will need to be considered by whoever takes government. And obviously, we are looking very heavily at not just Singapore, but all the other jurisdictions. Canada is at the end of their review. That'll be very influential. Like I said, the UK, their work, South Africa, what's happening there is very important in terms of looking forward as well. So obviously, yes, we're very closely watching what's happening, and we'll provide advice to whoever's in the next parliament.
It is amazing. It's basically a list of countries that influence copyright, thoughts and policy. Is a complete Venn circle, complete circle Venn diagram of the countries that are reviewing their law at the moment. It's quite amazing. One more question from Bronwyn.
Hi, thank you all very much for your rapid and very detailed presentations. Mandy, I'm really interested in what you've said about how treaty and IP interacts with copyright in New Zealand. And I guess I'm just wondering if you can give us a little bit more of a sense of how you might see that working out. And then Emma, I was wondering if you might also talk about how, for example, the work that IP Australia is currently doing around the protection of Indigenous knowledge and cultural expression, whether you're working together to see how the kind of colonial enterprise that is copyright might also expand to economic rights for Indigenous people.
I'll just quickly answer 'cause I've got the microphone. That's probably, one thing that I didn't put on our what's happening next to. Obviously, the IP Australia put out a discussion paper talking about traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expressions and what should be done. This is obviously, again, an area where there's been quite a lot of reports. We've just had the House of Representatives fake art inquiry come out, and we're helping the government prepare a response to that. Part of that was that there should be sui generis legislation in relation to TCEs and TK. So that's something that the government will consider. Obviously, given that IP Australia has started some of that work, it will probably flow in together. Again, that's something that will be most likely on the agenda for the next incoming government.
Thanks. So I should say a couple of things. One, there is a real risk that the 262 response is going to get caught up in patent. So it's also the flora and fauna tribunal sort of judgment or report. But as far as the copyright part, I expect that MB is going to set aside, and they've said that they are interested in setting aside a separate stream of work to sort of identify what needs to happen, what that sui generis system might look like, and hopefully work on getting a Crown response to this. I said at a conference not that long ago where ministers promised that there would indeed be a response from this government on 262. Where I think things get really interesting is when you end up with Tonga-derived works that are protected under both copyright and whatever the sui generis system is, how you work out limitations and exceptions and the relationship between whatever the sui generis system looks like and whatever the Copyright Act looked like. So I think that there's a lot of fairly complex policy work to be done to pick those apart, to develop a system that honors New Zealand's treaty obligations and at the same time is understandable, where sort of, people are actually working in libraries, museums, and I would expect schools as well.
Thank you very much. I think I'll close up the questions there. I think that was very good. And thank you so much, all three of you.